Hey y'all, this is your help video for quiz 3.06. Alright, your need to know info. Every single time you see one of these problems, the first question you should ask yourself is, where is the vertex of the angle that I'm looking at? Alright, if the vertex of the angle is in the center of the circle, then your formula is angle equals arc. This angle here is going to be the same measure as the arc that it intercepts. Remember, the intercepted arc is just the arc that is between those two endpoints. Alright, the next thing, if the angle is on the circle, if the vertex of the angle is touching the circle, then the angle equals half the measure of the intercepted arc. And again, that intercepted arc is from the two endpoints of your angle. It's the part of the circle that connects those two endpoints. So the angle would be half the arc. If the arc was 80, the angle would be 40. If the angle was 50, the arc would be 100. It goes either way. And then I don't think we're going to get to these last two in this quiz, so I'm just going to go ahead and focus on those first two for now. And we can go back if we need to look at those last two. But if it's in the center, the angle equals the arc, and if it's on the circle, then the angle is half the arc. So let's check out this first quiz question. What is the measure of arc BC? Alright, so here's arc BC, and that arc goes with this angle. That's the intercepted arc for that angle. And now we ask ourselves, well, where's the vertex of that angle? And the vertex is on the circle. So we know that, we have to memorize this, by the way. This is not on your formula sheet. I should have mentioned that. But we need to know that the angle equals half of the arc. So let's just plug in what we know. We know the angle is 65. That has to equal half of the arc. Since we're solving for the arc, we can either divide each side by 1/2 or multiply it by 2. It doesn't matter. Dividing by 1/2 and multiplying by 2 are the same thing. So we know that that arc has to be 130 degrees. Now, if plugging it into the formula confused you because you had that 1/2 there and that made it a little bit confusing, just think about it logically. If the angle is half the arc has to be twice as big as the angle. So we could have just taken our angle and multiplied it by 2. To get 130 degrees. But that should be your answer. The arc BC equals 130 degrees. Okay, the second quiz question. In circle A, the measure of arc CFE is 240 degrees. So we need to go ahead and trace out CFE. And remember, it has to come in that order. So I'm going to start at C. Then I need to go to F and then to E. So this entire green arc right here is 240 degrees. Well, if that green arc is 240 degrees, that major arc, we actually know how to find this yellow minor arc as well. Because a whole entire circle has 360 degrees in it. So if the green arc is 240, to figure out the yellow arc, we could take 360 degrees and subtract off 240 degrees. No idea why I just typed that in my calculator. Okay, so now I know the yellow arc is 120 degrees. Well, how does that help me? The reason it helps me is because the yellow arc is the intercepted arc of this angle, CAE. And that's what we're trying to find. We're trying to find the measure of CAE. So we always ask ourselves, well, where is the vertex of that angle? And in this case, the vertex of the angle is in the center of the circle. And so you need to memorize this formula, but if it's in the center, the angle measure is the exact same as the arc measure. The angle equals the arc. So this angle would be 120 degrees. All right, this one says, what is the measure of arc AC? All right, so let's start off by highlighting AC. That's the arc we're looking for. I like to go ahead and color code its angle as well. So this is the angle that goes with that arc. And like always, I'm going to ask myself, where is the vertex of the angle? Well, the vertex of the angle is on the circle. So I know that the angle equals half the arc. Or you could reverse that and say the arc is twice as big as the angle. I'm not going to write that out, but well, I guess I will. The arc equals 2 times the angle. They both say the same thing. Angle equals half the arc, or arc equals half the angle. So it doesn't matter which way you want to plug it in. I'm just going to go ahead and say that my angle measure equals half of my arc. So here I'm plugging it in. For the angle, I'm going to substitute in 3x minus 1.5. And for the arc measure, I'm going to substitute in 3x plus 9. And now I have an equation to solve. 1/2 times 3. Half of 3 is 1.5. Half of 9 is 4.5. I'm just distributing that 1/2 to each of those. Now I have an x on both sides. I want to get those x's on the same side. So I'm going to get rid of 1.5. I'm going to subtract it from each side. Oops, I just lined that up totally wrong. Should be written right here. 1.5, but y'all get the idea. So 3 minus 1.5 would leave me with 1.5x. And then I'm going to plop that straight down and plop that straight down. I'm trying to solve for x, so now I need to get rid of this 1.5. It's subtracting. The opposite would be to add it. And then I still need to get the x by itself. Right now I have 1.5 times x. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. And 6 divided by 1.5, let's see, is 4. So x equals 4. Now we got to be really careful because the question does not say solve for x. Always go back and check. Sorry, I'm trying to clean this up here. It's getting uglier. Always go back and check and see what the question says. This question says, what is the measure of arc AC? So instead of just putting x as our answer, we need to go back and substitute it in to find arc AC. So I'm going to substitute in that 4. 3 times 4 is 12, and 12 plus 9 is 21. So the measure of arc AC equals 21 degrees. All right, the next quiz question says segment CO is congruent to segment HZ. All right, that's cool. I'm going to go ahead and mark those. CO, oh, segment, not arc. Jeez Louise, it's already marked for us. Just kidding. So CO is congruent to HZ. We can see that with these congruency marks right here. Which congruent statement is true? All right, so let's talk about this for just a minute. If those two segments are the same, then we can tell a couple things, actually. We can tell that this angle and this angle are going to be the same, and we can also tell that this intercepted arc and this intercepted arc are going to be the same. So let's go through our answer options and just look at them. OZ is this tiny little piece right here. It is not going to be congruent to CO. Y'all can just look at that and tell CO is a lot bigger. CH, arc CH is this piece over here. It's not going to be the same size as HZO. We don't have enough information. CH congruent to COZ. No, again, we don't have enough information. But we do know that CO is going to be congruent to HZ. Okay, and then in circle T, what is the value of X? Okay, so let's look at what they've given us. I like to highlight things. It makes it easier for me. All we know as far as numbers is that this yellow angle is 71 degrees. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to let that help me. Oh, actually, I do know something else. I also know that this is a diameter, and a diameter splits the circle in half. So this side has to equal 180, and this side has to equal 180. So I got a lot of great information going on here, but I'm going to start with this angle of 71 degrees. That angle intercepts this arc. Remember, we just connect the two endpoints of the angle in their minor arc, not the major arc. And then you ask yourself, okay, well, where is the vertex of that angle? The vertex is on the circle, so I know the angle equals half of the arc. In other words, the arc is twice as big as the angle, so I can multiply 71 by 2 to figure out that this arc is 142 degrees. Okay, but that still doesn't answer the question. We're trying to figure out what x equals. So now let me highlight x. This is angle x, and it's intercepted by this arc. Well, we don't know that angle or that arc yet, but we do know that this is a diameter. So I know that this whole big arc would be 180, and I know that the red portion of it is 142. So to find the green portion, I could take 180 and subtract off 142. So I now know that the green arc is 38 degrees. And that will finally help me figure out angle x, because if we look over here, the vertex is on the circle, so the angle equals half the arc. So if the arc is 38, the angle has to be half of that. So I'm going to take 38 and divide it by 2. And so now I know that that angle has to be 19 degrees. So on that one, you had to put a bunch of pieces of information together. You had to start with what they gave you, which was the yellow arc, an angle. And then you had to remember that a diameter cuts the circle in half, and each side equals 180. So there's a lot of good stuff going on there. All right, y'all, good luck on this quiz.